actually put in there was looked at by us to start with, but I must say I prefer their version to our version. We started it simply because it looks so much nicer image-wise. So let me end by drawing some conclusion that nanobiotechnology has the potential certainly to improve healthcare and quality of life. It can certainly provide personalized medicine of the future. It allows you to tackle some of those major problems society are facing with, and certainly from a national development perspective, it's absolutely key and paramount that it is part and parcel of that process. You do have to be careful of the life cycle analysis when you start looking at nano activities. It's at its infancy, so countries such as Sri Lanka, universities such as KDU can always start this. You don't need multi-million-dollar facilities to do nanotechnology. You can do it anywhere, anytime. So it really is as open as your imagination is. And it's all about get an idea, get a group of people together who have multidisciplinary skill sets and start working together. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Ravi Silva, for that very informative lecture on nanobiology. BA, MA, PhD, FRSA. Professor Silva is the director of the Advanced Technology Institute and heads the Nano Electronics Center of the University of Surrey in the United Kingdom. Following secondary education in Sri Lanka, he joined the engineering department at Cambridge University for his undergraduate and postgraduate work. He was a recipient of the Cambridge Commonwealth Trust Fellowship while at Cambridge and a member of the Clare College. His research has resulted in over 500 presentations at international conferences and over 475 journal papers. He is a recipient of multiple awards. Of special note are the Albert Einstein Silver Medal, the Clifford Patterson Award, and the Javeed Hussain Prize by the UNESCO. Professor Ravi Silva has helped to set up the Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology and the Nanoscience Park Nanco Private Limited. His research interest encompasses a wide range of activities, but nanoelectronics and renewables being his two underlying themes. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Ravi Silva will now speak on nanobiotechnology for health and well-being. Over to you, Professor Silva.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Okay, thank you very much for that lovely introduction. I hope I can live up to all of what you said there. It would make me very pleased if I can. It's a great pleasure to be here and really talk to you about a subject that I'm passionate about, and also in a time where Sri Lanka actually needs everyone in all disciplines to work together. And I think with this theme that has been taken up by KDU on professionalism and national development, this is as good an opportunity as ever to show what Sri Lanka as a nation, we as a people can achieve when we start working together. So in interest of time and trying to bring things together, what I'm going to talk to you about is how nanotechnology can actually bring many of these disciplines, and I'm going to just focus particularly on the nanobio end of things for health and well-being. But since this talk is all about, and as part of national development and interprofessionalism, I need to say a little bit about it, so I will do that too. But before I start, let me take a minute just to tell you something about the University of Surrey. So I'm based at the University of Surrey. I joined there in 95, and my institute is shown in the background here. This blue building here is my institute. We've got about 160 researchers doing various aspects of nanotechnology and bringing multidisciplinaries together. The university 2 years ago was ranked 8th in the UK according to the Guardian League table. Last 8 was ranked 6th This year it's ranked 4th. So it's predominantly in a top 10 university, and we are actually working pretty much at the cutting edge of activities currently. My own institute got the Queen's Anniversary Award for contributions to semiconductors and electronic engineering, and that's a picture of it there where Professor Alf Adams is getting things. We also do much work on water research and also satellites. But getting back to the key theme of the conference, I thought yesterday I need to look and see how and why maybe KDU have come up with this national development theme. And it's very interesting when you start looking for a definition of national development. Many people have come up with many definitions, but there is not one single one that is similar in nature. But what is important, it's certainly not per capita income, it's not economic. It's social, economic, and cultural. And what's most important about the national development aspect is that it's about the quality of life that people should get used to. And it's part and parcel of the Human Rights Act that everyone deserves suitable quality of life. So interestingly, when you start looking strictly at the definition of national development, it has national defense in there, because every person has a right to have a secure environment. Engineering comes in order to improve lifestyles, computing, health, legal, development, prosperity. It just seems that the whole theme set up by KDU was ready-made for this national development aspects. So within that prospect itself, you not only are talking about some of the world's most important and pressing problems. Energy is number one, food security, water, climate change. But with national development and each of the nations contributing in their own way to these various fields, we can actually lift the world in that sense. And if we can show a lead, it really does mean much for everyone. So within that context, what I'm going to talk to you about is how nanobiotechnology can help you reach some of these economic objectives, the social objectives, as well as the economic objectives. And according to a recent World Bank report that came out just this month, it said that human beings are at the center of concern for sustainable development. They are entitled to a healthy and productive life in harmony with nature. So from a symposia point of view, having health and well-being as part of that national development is absolutely crucial and paramount, as discussed earlier. But let's go on to nanotechnology. Now, what is nanotechnology? If I had a nanometer-sized particle on my hand now, how big would it be? Now, interestingly, if you were to try and examine this, I can take my hand, and if I start expanding that, magnifying that by 10, I can start looking at the cell and the smaller cell cultures, the crevasses. That's a bit boring. But if I then start magnifying that by 1,000-fold, suddenly it becomes quite exciting. Now, with ordinary microscopes, with electron microscopes, I can do this expansion. And this is 100 nanometers of a human cell. Can go further and start looking at the various composition, constitution of these cells. So we are now looking at the nano world, the DNA of us, our blueprint. So in nanotechnology, what we try to do is, can we understand these various small cellular structures and make use of it in a structured way? See whether we can start using the physical world of electronics to work together with the biological world, and see whether we can get better systems in order to start looking at, in this particular case, well-being, etc. But it can be used for many other applications. So if we were to start putting that into a sort of timeline or scale line, what you see on one side, on your left-hand side, are the natural world, where the nanotechnology goes below the red blood cells, and then you start looking at your DNA, the ATP synthesis, etc., and how that can be connected up to the physical world. And that's what I'm going to try to do, how we are trying to optimize physical devices with biological entities by meshing them together. So in this in terms of the nanoscale, if you want to see optimization, what you see is a huge enhancement of signals because you've got much larger surface to volume ratios once you start going into the nanoscale. So it means previously where you had a surface area of a few square centimeters, that suddenly becomes hundreds of square meters. So to take an example, if I take a spoonful of sugar and I make that into nanosurfaces, that spoonful of sugar is enough to cover 3 football pitches. Right? That's the surface area we are talking about compared to a spoonful of sugar that you have. Now, if I start thinking of that from a physical point of view in trying to sweeten something, just imagine instead of having the sweetness associated with 1 teaspoon, but 1,000 teaspoons, if you can open up those nanoscale properties of materials. And that is possible simply because of the physics or the catalytic properties that you can get with surfaces once you start getting it smaller and smaller. So in order to harness that, what we need to try to do is to be able to start using properties in everyday applications. Let's just take, for example, a cafe scenario such as this that you see here. Now, if you look at that, that just looks like an ordinary cafe. But what we might not know is that within this cafe scene, you might have people who are having jackets that are actually monitoring your biopotential on a day-to-day basis, hour-to-hour basis, minute-to-minute basis, a second-to-second basis. Your jacket might know that you're going to go into cardiac arrest 10 minutes before you actually happen, simply because by looking at the rhythms that are coming out and analyzing it appropriately. In nanotechnology, what you're trying to do is to see where we can start putting this unobtrusive, non-invasive sensors into your body, into the clothing, into your vicinity, in order to be able to make this sort of predictive behavior when it comes to health and well-being. So in the case of this scenario, you could be looking at just an ordinary scene, but within that scene, you could have all of these various technologies embedded within the clothing, within the hat that you're wearing. It could be just a plaster. It could be an embedded capsule. You could even put this type of technology into your glasses or lenses. So this is the sort of scene that we want to try to do to make it a reality in the next few years, so that people can start looking at sensors, the simple glucose sensor that you can embed, or you can connect up to your iPhone, for example, by using plasmonic resonances, means that you can start looking at diseases such as diabetes. And once you start being able to monitor blood sugar levels, you can then start contributing from a societal point of view to cardiovascular diseases, amputations, complications in pregnancy. These are monitoring of these activities, these patients on a daily basis with everyday technology. So much like now in the case of iPhones, you have iBands that you can wear looking at your exercise routines. You can now start trying to think about that, going the next step, and looking at biopotential monitoring. By doing this from a national perspective, you can start saving a lot of days. In the UK, according to the HSE, there was 11 million days lost due to stress and other reasons of workplace illness. So again, once more from a national development point of view, you start reducing the stress levels, you start increasing productivity, and certainly you got a better, more friendlier workforce around you. Another area that there is a lot of work going on currently is on e-skins. So these electronic skins, wearable skins that can sit on your clothing. It can be just a patch that you use. And within this, it allows you to once more monitor things. It can also allow you to put growth factors in there. If you've got broken bones, you can start looking at scaffolds. And all of this is possible by using nanotechnology and embedding various particles, various things into the technology that is being used currently for health monitoring. So from this context, I'll try and take two examples of work that we've done in biopotential monitoring and in some work on looking at potential drug delivery methods for cancers and show how this can be used. But typically from a nano point of view, you can have sensors, you can have drug delivery systems, imaging improvements, and all of these are possible purely by looking at small scale enhancements into the structures. So first of all, let me take one example on intelligent plasters. Purely as a result of having a discussion with a friend of mine, I was challenged one day saying, can you do something about helping in doing some EEG monitoring? And in this case, this is a friend of mine who was working on sleep disorders. There's about 10% of the world who have some sort of sleep or stress-based disorder that needs EEG monitoring. Now in his case, he calls in his patients and he tells them to sit down in one of the evenings, and then he puts 128 or 256 of these sensors on the head, and if he can't get a good connection, he shaves them off, puts some electrogel, and he puts this, and he then says, relax. Just try and relax. I just want to monitor you. So this guy has 200 wires flowing down, and he's trying to relax in order for them to have some monitoring of his EEG signal. So the idea was, can I come up with something that was slightly easier to do than having all of these wires trailing around? So the target was, let's come up with some intelligent plasters. Now in order to do this, we needed to think about not just being able to monitor the potentials of your body, but also being able to wirelessly transmit that information appropriately so that it could be properly gathered. And again, transmission of data is also very, very important, because all of you may have 4G enabled phones that give you huge amounts of data, but actually there is not enough bandwidth at the moment. If everyone were to put their 4G on, you'll find that no one can actually work very well. So there has to be some sort of management of big data too that has to come in within this program. But in our case, we had to first come up with the interface of the potential monitoring to your electronics. So we came up with this thing that if I could get some sort of spike-based system that went through your dead skin layer, the stratum corneum, went into the epidermis and was able to get a signal out in a non-intrusive way, this would be useful. So looked around, and the technology that was used was this micro machine technology. And if you look at those dimensions there, those dimensions at the base are about 40 microns by about 100 microns. That's about the size of your human hair. So it's quite large, and every time you put a plaster with this sort of structure in, it does hurt. It will give you inflammation. So the question was, can you do better? We were working on materials called carbon nanotubes at that time, and these materials have a strength tensile-wise that is 20 times stronger than high tensile steel. It's got an electrical conductivity that's 1,000 times better than copper, so it seems to be the ideal structure. In order to do this, normally carbon nanotubes are grown at about 700 degrees. You heat something up to 700 degrees, you put some metal catalysts on top, and then you put a plasma in there. It's a methane plasma, and you can grow carbon nanotubes that are aligned. Now, clearly, 700 degrees is not compatible with any electronic applications or plastics, etc. So we ended up coming up with a new technology that allowed you to grow carbon nanotubes at room temperature. Once you did that, we then had to put these on plastic substrates. So what you see here is a plastic substrate that has got these squares. Each of these squares are about 100 microns by 100 microns. That's the size of a human hair. But if you start looking at this in a magnified view, what you see is millions of tubes now instead of one tube. So previously, when you had the old technology, you had one silicon tube that used to hurt people that went in. Now you've got 1 million of these tubes on each of these patches, basically. And you can have large numbers of patches. If you start going in, you can start seeing the carbon nanotubes. Now, one of the problems with nanomaterials is the fact that there is a fear that they could be toxic if it goes into the body and it is retained in it. And clearly, if you take a metal surface and you scratch it, you can get particles breaking off as shown here. So we needed to make sure that this sort of thing didn't happen. In order to do that, what we did was a very simple thing where you use epoxy or araldite. You take araldite, you put it on top and you heat it. And once you do that, all you do is you let the epoxy sink down. It's a biocompatible surface and it secures your nanotubes to your base. So suddenly you now have a very secure base on which you can do this sort of test. So you have your surface. If you look at it in cross-section, you see these millions of nanotubes that are sticking out, and these now can then be used for biopotential monitoring. So using some electronic knowledge, you can start looking at amplifier circuits and how you can use silver chloride on top of the surface in order to increase the ion current associated with bodily fluids. In order to make it biocompatible rather than having a carbon nanotube surface, we made the surface silver chloride. So you can see these tiny silver chloride nanoparticles on the surface decorating the surface of your material. And this allowed us to come up with these patches that were then put for testing. So these tests were done and compared to Biosemi, which was the best biosensor that was out there. And we were able to show that it was actually highly competitive. The company that worked with us, which is a company called Starlab, are selling this based in Barcelona. And the first tests that were done, in the UK we didn't have ethical approval to use this sort of nanobio systems, but in Barcelona they got that through much faster than us. And they did their testing and they were able to show that you could get very, very good biopotential signals, and the signal was without any electrogel or without any sort of preparation of surface. I'm going to skip through this part because I don't think I have enough time. Again, it's interesting being able to monitor biopotentials and being able to predict whether someone is going to be ill or going to start having symptoms of various things is very important. Within the UK, in 2000, it was estimated that there would be a GDP, 1.5% GDP spend on health type applications from the government. A report has just come out from BIS, which is Business Innovations and Skills Department in the UK, that says that the health cost for the aging population will go up and it will probably reach about 5% GDP. So it's a huge area that is being looked at in order to examine things. So within our program, what we were able to do was to have these biosensors that had a base that was electronics that communicated with the central activity that then was able to pass on information. We didn't do this whole thing, but this was the whole idea, that you had this thing called a Guardian Angel project, where these biosensors talking to a central unit that would transmit information to your medical team or public health monitoring systems. So it's a system that can be implemented, and we are looking to see how that can be done in the future. We also did some work on looking at different nanosensors to be able to monitor brain communication, but I shall not say too much about that. Moving on to the last part, on cancer, one of the areas that we wanted to try and do some work with was to see whether we can contribute something in cancer treatment. And in this case, with friends from the oncology department, what we wanted to see was whether we could get nano vehicles effectively to deliver drugs to cancerous cells. So within this process, what you need to typically do is to be able to functionalize your nanoparticles with certain aspects, and in this case we wanted to first be able to monitor whether we were delivering drugs, and secondly what was happening to the drugs. So to do this, we came up with a strategy on functionalizing and visualizing the nano vehicles that we were using, which were carbon nanotubes. And once you have delivered the drug, you can do the chemotherapy type, looking at treatment, or you could do hypothermia or chemotherapy by looking at various schemes on knockdown processes. So first of all, we had to design the nano vehicle. So in this case, what we did was we functionalized the nanotube, and in this what you see is doxorubicin, but you can put cisplatin or other anti-cancer drugs. It had to be connected to a BSA because it had to have a vehicle on which you could put fluorescein and antibodies. And using this vehicle, we were able to show that you could start delivering the drugs to the various cells. These are all done within cellular structures. They haven't been done on animal testing as of yet. We've looked at colon cancer here. We've also looked at other cancer systems, these PC3 prostate cancer cells. And what we are able to show is that we can not only deliver these drugs accurately to your cancer cells, but you can also remove the vehicle in which you deliver them. So to do that, you need to be able to look at the functionalization, the efficacy of functionalization, the efficacy of delivery of drugs, and also whether your cells were stressed or not. Just to end, let me just show you some of the stuff using this technology, what is being portrayed at the moment. Oops, I didn't want that. So this is, we work with one of the big semiconductor companies.
I'm feeling good.
Well, I was calling to check and see if you've done your health test already.
Remember, you have to send the results to the doctor this morning. That's right. I almost forgot.
So this is the potential of the nanotechnology in future delivery systems and diagnostics.
I might have to go see the doctor tomorrow. He sent me a message. Let me collect the odor, and then I'll send you the test results right away.
Okay, that'd be great. I'm actually meeting with the buyer tonight.
So I'm going to just move that on to the doctor's appointment
Okay.
now.
This is the health data that you've been sending me. Last time you sent it, something suspicious was
Is
detected.
there anything wrong?
I just want to make sure everything is okay. This reacts to the cancer cells. Please drink it. Breast cancer. Take this capsule. It's a Roba Nano capsule.
So it's not a robot really, it actually goes in the bloodstream, but it does deliver things specificity because of the antibody-antigen interactions.
We can already see the positive effects. This healing patch, please put it on your chest.
So, because my time is up, let me just stop there. But what I wanted to just show you is that when we do research for big companies, what they come up with is good imagery like that takes those ideas and says, this is how it could happen in the future. And